I can still hear it, the pounding. Heavy, impatient, and angry. The kind of knock that doesn't wait to be answered, that demands submission. That sound marked the moment my life split cleanly in two. Before that night, I was just another quiet neighbor. After it, ordinary would never describe me again. It was late, close to midnight. I dozed off on the couch, the TV buzzing faintly in the background, when that knock jolted me awake. At first, I thought something was wrong. A fire, a break-in, maybe an emergency. But when I opened the door, it wasn't an emergency. It was Mark. 6 feet of raw rage and alcohol fumes stood in front of me, eyes bloodshot and fixed on me like I'd committed some unforgivable sin. "Thought you could mess with my wife and get away with it?" He slurred. My throat tightened. "Mark, what are you talking about?" He stepped closer, the smell of whiskey thick in the air, his finger stabbing toward me. "Don't play dumb. You've been talking to her behind my back. I know what's going on." For context, Karen was my neighbor. Soft-spoken, kind, and the sort of woman who apologized when someone else bumped into her. We'd talk occasionally about her flowers, the weather, or her husband's temper. That was it. Nothing more. But Mark didn't care about the truth. His eyes weren't searching for honesty. They were burning with accusation. Before I could react, his hand shot out. He grabbed my collar and slammed me into the wall so hard the drywall cracked behind me. I remember the sound, the sting of impact, the smell of cheap liquor on his breath. And then I saw her, Karen, running toward us, her face twisted with fear and something else. Relief, maybe. Relief that someone else was finally seeing the monster she'd been living with. That night ended in flashing blue lights. Officers dragged Mark away as he spat curses into the night. Karen stood beside me, trembling, whispering, "I'm so sorry." I didn't mean for it to go this far. But I could tell. This wasn't the end. Not even close. Mark wasn't the kind of man who let things go. That night, as they shoved him into the back of the squad car, he locked eyes with me and swore he'd teach me a lesson. I thought he meant yelling, threats, maybe a broken mailbox. But no, the real lesson was the one he would learn later behind bars in a place full of concrete, steel, and karma. 3 months passed before I heard from him again. Quiet months, but uneasy ones. Karen filed for divorce soon after the assault and moved in with her sister. I tried to return to normal. Work, coffee, sleep, repeat. But peace never really came back. Every car door at night made me flinch. Every passing shadow felt like a warning. And then one morning I saw it. A message carved into the side of my truck, deep into the paint with something sharp. One word, soon. That was Mark's style. No imagination, just intimidation. I called the police, but they shrugged. "Could be anyone," they said. "No proof." Anyone. Sure. Anyone who knew exactly what that word meant. That night, Karen called me, her voice trembling through the phone. "He's out on bail," she whispered. "He keeps saying he's got unfinished business." Unfinished business. That's what he called me now, unfinished business. The next few days were a blur of paranoia. I changed my locks, installed cameras, and parked my car down the block. But one evening, just as the sun dipped below the rooftops, I saw him standing across the street, hands in his pockets. Smiling, watching, I walked outside, my heart hammering, phone in hand, already recording. "You need to leave, Mark!" I shouted. He laughed, a cold, hollow sound. "Relax, I just want to talk." "You had your chance to talk," I said. "Now go before I call the cops." He took a step forward, his grin fading into a sneer. "You think they'll save you? You think you can ruin my life and walk away clean? Ruin your life!" I snapped. "You did that yourself." For a split second, he froze, as if the truth stung more than the insult. Then he lunged. The struggle was wild, desperate. I stumbled backward onto the driveway, my phone skidding away. But what he didn't know was that I'd been ready for this. The security cameras caught everything, every word, every threat, every punch. When the police arrived, thanks to a neighbor who heard the shouting, they saw the footage right there. Mark's rages on full display. His final mistake. That video didn't just save me, it sealed his fate. Mark had wanted to teach me about fear. Instead, that night enrolled him in a much harsher school, one with locked doors, concrete floors, and orange uniforms. The day he was sentenced, I sat quietly in the back of the courtroom, numb, listening as justice finally spoke. He stood there in the courtroom, chains rattling at his wrists, a county jumpsuit clinging to him as he tried, futilely, to look defiant. The judge read his charges one by one: assault, harassment, violation of a restraining order. With every word, Mark's cocky smirk faded a little more, inch by inch. And when the gavel finally came down, 7 long years, the sound hit like thunder, ripping open memories that had been buried since that first night. Karen sat beside me, her shoulders shaking with silent tears. It wasn't joy that filled her, it was relief. After years of living under Mark's shadow, she could finally breathe. For a moment, I thought it was over. But life rarely ends with gavels. Real endings tend to arrive in envelopes quietly, without fanfare. 2 months into his sentence, the first one arrived. Thin, jagged handwriting on the outside, prison stamped on the back. Inside, one line: "You got lucky, but luck runs out." No return address. No flourish. Just a reminder that even behind bars, Mark's presence could still be felt. Over time, more letters followed. Each one began angry, but ended strangely different. Less venom, more reflection. One read, "You ever wonder why people like me end up here? Because we mistake control for strength." Another, "You think prison changes people? It doesn't, but time does." I didn't respond at first. But months later, I sent him a single sentence. Maybe the lesson isn't about control, it's about consequence. After that, the letters turned almost confessional. Mark wrote about his fights, the fear he'd caused, and the slow realization that inside, he wasn't the biggest monster anymore. He told stories about a man named Darius, an older inmate who taught him carpentry, patience, and a strange sort of humility. One line struck me: "You can't rebuild anything, a wall, a table, a life, until you stop blaming the hammer." For the first time, Mark admitted fault. A year later, Karen received a letter. No excuses, no manipulation, just an apology. A broken man trying to make sense of the wreckage he'd created. I couldn't say I forgave him completely, but for the first time, the anger inside me softened. It was replaced by something closer to peace. Or maybe pity, because while I walked free, Mark was still learning his lessons behind those cold, echoing walls. 3 years passed. I hadn't heard from him in over a year and thought that chapter of my life was closed for good. I'd moved, found a new job, and even started dating again. The world had color once more, real color, not the gray blur of constant fear. Then one morning, an envelope arrived. No return address. The handwriting froze my breath. It was him. Inside, a letter longer than any before. First line: "If you're reading this, I've learned my last lesson." He described how prison had stripped him down to nothing: ego, control, audience, leaving only himself to confront the violence and pride that had defined him. Therapy, he wrote, was first a requirement for parole, then a lifeline. Slowly, he saw himself as he truly was. Every man here thinks he's in control until someone stronger reminds him he's not. I used to be that man. I used to think fear made me powerful. And then the line that changed everything: "You taught me my first real lesson. Strength isn't power. It's our restraint. I hated you for it. Then I learned to thank you for it." I sat there, letter trembling in my hands. It didn't erase the fear, the scars, or the memories, but it felt like the storm had finally passed. 2 weeks later, Karen called. Her voice was soft, heavy, but calm. "Mark's gone," she said. "Heart attack. No fight, no parole, just gone." Silence followed. Neither of us cried, neither of us celebrated. We just breathed. The kind of breath that comes when something toxic finally leaves the air. Days later, another envelope arrived. This one is from Darius, the inmate Mark had written about. Inside was a small, beautifully carved wooden box. Darius explained it was made for the man who had taught him his hardest lesson. I keep that box on my desk now, a reminder not of fear or revenge, but of transformation. Sometimes the people who set out to teach you a lesson end up learning one of their own. The hard way. So tell me, what would you have done in my shoes? Drop a comment below, and if you've ever witnessed someone get exactly what they deserved, hit that like button. For more real-life drama, karma, and stories of revenge, subscribe and ring that bell, because if you don't, the next twist might happen while you're still asking, "Wait, What just happened?